guys are coming back from COVID. Have you had any more cases? How has practice gone, and where are we looking for Saturday?
Yeah, first of all, great question. I know everybody's thinking about that. Appreciate it. We practiced on Sunday. It was our first practice back. There's a series of steps that you take. First step is just getting everybody outside, not in the building because the building was locked down for days, but being able just to condition. And then the conditioning turns in the next day of conditioning and weight room. Then that goes conditioning, weight room, individual instruction outside with your players with just small groups, everything in very small groups. And then you eventually lead your way up into walkthrough. And then you can get into obviously a practice on Saturday. So it's been days leading up to yesterday's practice. Players practice extremely hard. We've had 0 positive tests as of December 3rd. We've had 2 in the last 7 days. Now, with that said, I'll explain that is that we are going to have unavailable because of the COVID 21-day protocol, more than 20 plus players not available just from that, not injury, not anything like that. Just that. Now you're probably sitting there going, wow, well, how the heck can you play? Remember the Big Ten, green, orange, red, whether we play, don't play, whether you're in that red, all those other things come on a 7-day window of percentages based on how many cases you've had in that 7-day window. Okay. So as I said, we've had 2 in the last 7 days. So that's why we're allowed to. Now there's that 21-day protocol that still keeps kids out for that long. Okay. So that's why we're in that position that we're in, but definitely north of 20 players will be missing it just with COVID. Then you add the injuries. So again, this is what it is. But our players and the guys that were out there did a great job practicing on Sunday and really look forward to playing again. And again, it's never our call whether we play or not, but again, as from this point, as of right now, everything changes by the minute, but plan on playing against Nebraska on Saturday, and we've prepared accordingly.
Thank you, Coach. Let's go to Meg Ryan. Meg, go ahead.
Hi, PJ. Good to see you.
Hi, Meg. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, just a sort of a follow-up to that. First is you mentioned this, there's only been 2 positive cases the last 7 days. I'm just curious, you have 20 plus players not available. Is like any coaches a part of that maybe won't be able to participate in the game? I know their period is smaller at 10 days, but curious about the coaches. And then I guess just as another point of how have you kind of talked to some of those players who are going to be missing potentially the rest of this season, right? And sitting out because of the policy. What has your message been to them?
Yeah, first of all, our coaches are doing, most of our coaches, if not all of our coaches, will be back for the game on Saturday. And again, it all depends on, Meg, they have that 10-day window, and whether they get symptoms or symptoms comes back, it's unpredictable, right? So for me to sit there and tell you that everybody will be back, coaching wise, I think would be inaccurate just based on today being Monday. I don't want to give you any false information. We would hope that everybody is back on Saturday, but that's to be determined. To answer your second question, you asked about what was the second one, Meg, about the players?
It's about the players who, depending on when they test positive, some of them, their season.
Yeah, great. Yeah, sorry, Meg, to cut you off. That's a really good question because this year has been a constant balance, very different than other years because normal years, you're talking about now and now only, period, right? And there's a transparency and an honesty in this as well. That again, you're doing 2 things at the same time. And usually the head coach is the one doing that. The head coach is the one looking through the microscope, but also the telescope, right? To affecting now, right? Under the microscope, the small little integral parts that have to deal with right now, but also having this, 1 to 2 year view down the road. And a lot of times your players are just do now. But there's this transparency and this honesty that's been talked about of not only does it, whatever we're doing now affect now in Nebraska and 2 weeks from now, but it's going to affect 2021 because the year is eligible for everyone to come back. And you don't want to ignore that either because there's a certain standard that you have in your program. Okay. And you never want that certain standard to come down, right? Saying, well, it's okay because of, right? There's a certain standard that academically, right? Just because we're in a pandemic, that I want guys to succeed in the classroom. I want them to do that, right? We all want them to do that. We all want them to do the right things off the field. Even though we're in a pandemic, there's a situation going on, but it's not just necessarily an excuse for everything, right? And so there's this transparency that you want to be able to keep, that everything affects everything. And right now, we're not only talking about now, but we're talking about how it's going to affect us in the future. And I think that for the first time, at least in my career, I think that's okay to talk about, because there are kids that are going to miss this game, are going to miss the next game, and miss last week's game. And that was it. That'd be how they ended their year, but they get a chance to come back next year. And you want to keep that hope out there, that carrot in front of them. Like, listen, it's okay. Because like I've said before, the number one thing I care about in this program is our players, our staff's mental health. And I've said that for 4 years. We had programs at Western Michigan for that. I'm a huge advocate of that, always have been. And we have incredible resources here. And we want our players to continue to have proactive education to use them. So, but you worry about, this is it. It's the end. No, it's not. So there's that balance constantly of now affects now and now will affect then when then comes. I hope I answered your question, because there is a true balance to that. Then in most years, you're like, listen, 1-0 only today. That's what matters. And it's almost like when kids get hurt, when I'm on the field with them, first thing I tell them is like, you're going to be okay. And we're going to take it one day at a time. But I tell you what, next year, you're going to be unbelievable. You know, it's that right now we're going to have to deal with this, but there is the calm, there are calm seas somewhere. The clouds will part. Okay. We just maybe can't see the forest through the trees just yet, but you got to keep that out there for them too. So maybe the first time in my career that I've talked more about that than I ever have.
Let's go to
without sacrificing the day-to-day standard of what the expectation will always be.
All right. Thank you, Coach. Chip Scoggins, go ahead.
Hey, PJ, I listened to your coach's show last week with Guardsy and Grimmer, and you mentioned a number of times actually, that nobody's to blame, players didn't do anything wrong, and you're passionate and adamant about something you'd heard, or were you speaking in general, or kind of what was that?
Yeah, that's Chip. That's a really good question, because I think I'm just speaking in general. I think that there's a reputation of COVID-19, right? That if you get it, you must have done something wrong. Like, how'd you get it? And where'd you get it from? And especially in athletics, right? Where sometimes somebody gets it and there's a certain emotion towards based on how old they are, where they got it, how they got it, and if it's not athletics or not at times. And I think they're all looked at differently. And again, you know, there's wives that are getting it and kids that are getting it. And, you know, there's schools that have it transferred. We have 55,000 students on campus. We have a city of 3 million people. Everybody's still learning of how this whole thing works. So, and I think it's 82 college football teams in Division I, Chip, have either canceled the game or moved a game. Okay. So it's part of our society. It's not part of just the athletic society. It's part of our society. And we knew there was a reason why the season was bumped back by everybody or canceled at one point by everybody, because no one knew how this was all going to work. And no one knows exactly everything about this virus, right? Everything. We're finding out new things all the time. So I just wanted to make sure my players are my responsibility, and especially to do everything I can to keep them safe, healthy, and protect them from as much as you possibly can, like a parent can. But just because somebody has it, I never want them to feel, and especially if they didn't, because there's a series of questions you have to ask them. Who are you around? What'd you do? Where'd you go? Was there some type of gathering? And they have to do that for the state, and they have to do that for other types of policy, Chip. But when that stuff comes back, you never want a kid to feel like when they didn't do anything, like they didn't do anything that's uncommon that everyone else is doing. And there's not this secure bubble where no one else is allowed in ever, that they did something wrong. Because again, that's going to affect the mental health part of people. And that's what I meant by that is that I worry about this mental health component. Like, I got it, but Coach, I followed every single thing, every protocol, everything we're doing, and I somehow still got it. And again, and that's why I think Mark Coyle said it first, that's the ghost in the room. And it's hard to just eliminate it and say, we won't get it. And again, we're not in and again, we're in a city, like I said, 3 million people. There's 55,000 students on campus there. And again, we have a younger football team. There's a lot of different things that go involved in all of this. So again, Chip, I hope I answered your question, because what I was saying was I just want people to know that this isn't like they all X number of players got it from this location on this day of what they did wrong. And I don't want our media or our fans to think that either, because if it did happen, that would be out there. Okay. So I think that's unfair, and no one's doing that, Chip. I'm not saying the media is doing that. I'm not saying no one's doing that, but remember, my responsibility is them and make sure they're okay. But I'm the one that when they do test positive, I see them. I talk to them on FaceTime, and I see the tears, and I see the disappointment, and I see coach, I have no idea where I even got it. Right. And so that's the hard part, because you're also a parent. So I hope that answers your question, Chip, but thanks for asking.
BJ. Yeah. Thanks, BJ.
Let's go to Daniel House. Daniel.
Hey, PJ, you touched on it briefly, but how have you and the staff made sure all the players have the resources they need, both mentally and physically?
Yeah, well, we've had mental health specialists in our department as long as I've been here. Dr. Carly Anderson, who I think is one of the best in the business, and her husband, Dr. Justin Anderson. They work hand in hand with their staff, with our student athletes, and promoting mental health with our players, not only just mental health, but sports performance. I mean, we're talking about a whole staff just designed for that, working hand in hand with our trainers and our staff, with Mike Sipniak and his whole staff on the physical and emotional health of our players as well. Again, it's all, since I've been here, been talked about, been expressed, been encouraged. I mean, it's an enormous amount of numbers of how many of the percentage of our players who have actually seen sports performance, mental health specialists. It's encouraged. I mean, I'm one that encourages it and has been an advocate for years on this, right? Because of the pressures that student athletes deal with, that the social media, the constant judging that used to be just maybe once a week or in the newspaper. Now it's constant on social media, the rapid amount of information, the rapid amount of whatever's good today is not good enough tomorrow, is old tomorrow, forgotten about. There's all of those standards and expectations, and, people always finding out what you can't do and what you haven't done instead of celebrating the moments of positivity. So that's what our whole program's designed around, Daniel, and always will be, and always has been as long as I've been a head football coach, and we'll continue to do that and encourage that as much as we possibly can, because there's also things that, as a head football coach on HIPAA laws, you can and cannot know, but you can encourage, and you can put those people in front of your football team as much as you possibly can, and know that it's okay. It's okay to do that. There's also a stigma you got to break that way, that you're not just going to see some doctor for your brains messed up. That's not true. It's about being able to either break through performance, have sport performance increase, have have somebody else to talk with, get some techniques to be able to deal with it. If people need some type of medication to be able to do that. I mean, there's a wide range of mental health. And we've talked about this since day one, since I've been here. And I appreciate our administration, Mark Coyle, President Gable, of allowing us to have those resources that have only grown since I've been here. And I think that's so healthy for student athletes in 2020 and moving into 21.
Let's go to Joe Schmidt. Joe, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, PJ. I'm wondering, in this crazy year, what would it mean to you in this program if on that championship weekend in the Big Ten you were able to play Wisconsin, first of all? And secondly, are you doing any lobbying at all to see that happen?
Yeah, the wonderful thing about, well, I can't say the wonderful thing. I think there's an advantage and disadvantages, and I don't know how many days it would be that less than 2 weeks out, nobody knows who they're going to play, right? And I think that's across the board. But Wisconsin, Minnesota is one of the greatest rivalries in all of college football. And we would love to play that game. And I think Wisconsin would say the exact same thing. So to say there's not lobbying, I would say, is inaccurate, because I think both teams really want to play that game. Who wouldn't want to play in that game? That's why you come to the University of Minnesota. That's why you go to the University of Wisconsin, to play in the rivalries like that. We have 4 of the best rivalries in the Big Ten that student athletes get to play in, that are some of the most historic in the country. I mean, that's why you come play at the University of Minnesota. So I hope that all works out. Again, but nobody knows what's going to happen. Again, at the beginning of this, it was going to be West versus East, but I hope as we kind of go through in a season of change and uncertainty that why not? And I know that the University of Minnesota, I know that our student athletes want to continue to uphold that famous rivalry and tradition. That's what it's all about. That's exciting. That's the fun part about this. So I'm sure Wisconsin feels the same way. That's what college football is all about. So absolutely.
If I could follow up just real quickly, are you getting any sense at all that the Big Ten may be open to this idea?
I haven't really asked the openness. I think, I think we've made, I think Director Coyle and I have had numerous conversations about anything that could happen in the last week. So I think that our stance is very clear on that. I think Mark's is too. Mark definitely wants to be able to do it. But again, we're not in charge of the Big Ten. There's a lot of different parts that are going to have to move around that maybe was once agreed upon before is maybe not agreed upon at that point. I don't know whether that was signed, sealed, delivered. And I'm not here to disrespect Big Ten's decision with West versus East. I'm not here to do that either. I'm here to say that it's been an interesting year, to say the least. That who knows what that last week looks like. And if it hasn't been scheduled, then why not? But I'm not here to say that someone's decision of saying West versus East is wrong or that shouldn't be done that way. But it would be great to continue that streak of one of the greatest rivalries in college football. I mean, keep that going. I think that would be great, but those are for decisions that are made above me and above Mark. And I know that they'll always have our student athletes' best interest at hand, no matter what they decide.
Let's go to Eric Olson with the Associated Press. Eric.
Hey, PJ.
Eric.
It's kind of become a little bit of a topic nationally, maybe just a little bit. In the back of your mind, and you've talked a lot about the psychology and the mental health of it. Do you ever, in the back of your mind, do you ever get concerned about players, the care factor maybe dwindling a little bit when you have a season that kind of unfolds like this? We're into December now.
Well, I think anybody who's here cares, period. Right. I mean, I think that it's too hard of a game not to invest as much as you do and not care. I think there's been challenges that have challenged every single one of us of how much it matters to all of us and what truly matters to us. And I think those are very healthy and transparent conversations. As I said at the beginning of this pandemic, the greatest thing I heard at the beginning of it was from my wife, Heather, who said, Mother Nature told all of us to stop what we're doing, take a deep breath. There's a lot of things in our world we got to make right quick. And I'm going to take everything away from you, just like we do as parents, take the toys away. So everybody has to figure it out. And I think it's similar in football right now. Is that there's a lot of things that are outside all of our control. And no one has a playbook for COVID. And no one has been through this particular deal with college football before. And some are affected more or less. And some are going to sit there and say, yeah, well, that's an excuse. Or, hey, that's just part of the challenge. And I get all that. But what I see is you got to be very transparent. This goes back to, Eric, what I talked about, this microscope and this telescope. And I think part of the care meter is, yes, it's caring about now, which most is tunnel vision, this year only. We're not going to talk about anything else. It's having the acceptance and the ability to be able to have the proactiveness to maybe broaden that a little bit, which maybe I never have as a coach. I've done internally, but I haven't maybe done that with my football team, to be able to make sure that they know that what you do now, it matters and you should care about it, because here's how it's going to affect this. Not only tomorrow, not only Saturday against Nebraska or the last week or even next year in 2021. What you're doing now is you're creating trained behavior becomes boring habits. Boring habits create elite instincts. You're creating whatever you're doing now. You are creating the habits and instincts that you're going to have when you're a father, you're a husband, right? That when you're a responsible professional, these go way beyond just football. So when I say everything affects everything, that's what I mean. And this care meter, it's not just about football. When in a world where this care has been so isolated to football, think about everything you guys know about our program, what we do and how we do it. We do it always together, and the activities we do and the places we go and the experiences we have, gone. Isolate, separate, and just football. And if you're going to do anything else besides that, it's got to be like this. So I think it's keeping a broad spectrum of that word care that now will affect then, and care for your entire life. academically, athletically, socially, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. And it's forced us to show exactly what you value. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. It's a really good question in 2020 right now. But this sport is really hard to do. And I think 2020 in college football is hard to do in general if you don't care about what you're doing in all areas of your life.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Ryan Burns. Ryan?
Hey, PJ, I got a football question for you.
All right.
All right, so going back to your last game against Purdue, the offense in the fourth quarter really struggled, and the fourth quarter offense in general this season has been a struggle. So how do you get them moving like they do in the first 45 minutes of the game?
I think that's a really good question. For us though, it's being consistent. Okay, we've had whether it's been personnel, whether it's been certain situations based on time management, whether it's been based on situations of how the defense has been playing. There's certain decisions you have to be able to make that have the clock management a part of that. But being maybe a little more balanced than we normally are. We've been able to finish some games, Ryan, in the past that, like I said before, beginning of the year, we might have to win different ways this year than when we've won certain ways years prior. And then what maybe you're used to based on personnel, based on people being out, based on how the other side of the ball is playing. So all those decisions come into play, and every one of those decisions are mine. And all those decisions, again, have been made by me. But we got to be more balanced. I think that's where I've learned based on this football team, we got to be more balanced and finish the game on offense. And listen, this isn't something our players don't know. They know we've got to finish on offense when we get an opportunity, because when we've won really big games, we've been able to. When it's been close, we haven't been able to do that. And our defense has come out and won some games this year, which was great, just like Penn State last year and Purdue this year, which has been great at that final moment. But we don't even have to get to those plays if we can finish it on offense. So you're juggling both sides all the time and how it feels, special teams as well, based on our kicking situation, based on all that. So again, I don't have a clear answer for you, but you're taking all of that data and you're gonna use it into the future as you keep moving forward.
All right, we have a lot of questions in chat. We have time for two more though. So we're going to go to Dave Campbell with the Associated Press, and then we're going to finish with Dane Mizutani from the Pioneer Press. So Dave, go ahead.
Hey, PJ, it's been so long, I can't even remember if we've addressed Rashad Bateman with you, but I guess just what was that conversation like in talking through, his decision, and who do you see sort of starting to fill some of those snaps at his spot?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, we're talking about a young man who, as a true junior, right, or true sophomore, right, going into his true junior year, there's a pandemic. He's going to be one of the best receivers in the country, has an option to opt out, just like everybody in the country does because of the health concerns, does everything the right way. And again, we're talking about a young man at wide receiver who can come out early and be a possible first-round pick. These are things you want in your program, decisions that you want kids to be able to make, hopefully after their true junior year, right? But in a pandemic, those are very difficult conversations. And from day one, we supported Rashad, and I'll continue to continue to support Rashad, because this is all about empathy, right? This is about putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding where they're coming from. And again, I know Rashad's teammates have done that as well. This is a family. Forget about me. I love you. And there's certain things that people have to do that they feel is right, and we're going to support him. And I wish him all the best. He's been nothing but absolutely awesome to the state of Minnesota, for our university, to the Twin City area, for change in our Twin City area. He's an advocate of our program. He's a special person. And for him to be able to do that at the next level in the NFL and represent the University of Minnesota, can't wait to see him do it. And when young people have choices that maybe they normally don't have based on the pandemic, you've got to respect those decisions and choices. They're learning how to become men. And make decisions and be accountable and hold responsibility for those decisions with conviction. So again, proud of him. Can't wait to see him on Sundays, and know he's already working hard towards that. Some of the guys that are replacing him, the Michael Brown Stevens of the world, has had a really, really good few weeks. You look at Clay Geary, obviously everybody knows Chris Hoffman-Bell. You look at, Daniel Jackson had a few huge catches last week as a true freshman. Those are some of the guys stepping into that role as well. And then we'll add this next class, which most of the receivers are coming early. And then we'll add that to the group that we have, and we'll continue to develop those receivers.
All right, last question, Dane from the Pioneer Press. Go ahead, Dane.
Hey, PJ. Just doing something on Antoine Winfield with the Vikings playing the Bucs this weekend. You've talked a lot about him in the past. What were your initial impressions of him as far as him helping you establish the culture you wanted to at the U? And then how did you see him handle the pressure that came along with, being Antoine Winfield Sr.'s son and constantly having those comparisons?
Well, I think the first word is response. When I think of Antoine Winfield Jr., I just think of somebody who's just resilient in their response. Antoine Winfield Jr. did not have to stay here. If anybody would have been, it would have been forgiven to leave or accepted to leave or understood to leave. It would definitely have been part of Antoine and some others. And he stayed. And it wasn't an easy road for him. I mean, the first 2 years, he didn't play much. 1 year, basically didn't play at all. And you're talking about a guy who always had a smile on his face, always was an elite worker, worked with every bit of passion, heart, discipline, responsibility that you could ask somebody to do, always had a positive attitude, and had a lot of things dealt his way that he had to be able to deal with, and responded truly in the right way, always, every single time. And I respect that about him. And when you watch him on Sundays, that's who he is, smile on his face. And when you watch his dad plays just as aggressive. And when you have a dad who had so much success in the NFL, I think I've made this comparison before, but if you had a dad that's a train conductor, you're probably going to like trains. You're going to know more about trains and know if you're going to want to go into trains or be a conductor at an earlier age and commit to that, or maybe not. Right. So he had an option earlier in life to know, do I love football, or maybe I don't want to be like an NFL football player or a football player. And he was around that at an early age, and you could just see his instincts. And the reason why he was so good too was a part of it was because he was around it through his entire life and his upbringing, watching his dad play. So there's a lot of pressure that comes along with that, but Antoine never put that on himself. And I never saw that from Antoine Winfield Sr. either. Never put pressure on his son, never compared. A lot of people on the outside would compare him to his dad, but never inside the Winfield family, ever. They just loved their son as their son. And whatever he wanted to do, they were going to support him. And that's special, because a lot of parents try to live vicariously through their children, and they didn't at all. They just love him for Antoine, whether he was going to play in the NFL or not. They just loved him for who he was. And that's really cool. That's anybody can learn from those two as parents that way. And so again, I don't think he ever felt that pressure. And we always define pressure of what you can control. Stress is what you can't control. And I think Antoine mastered that. I think there were a lot of external expectations for him, but the only thing that mattered to him was the internal pressure he put on himself. And I think the most elite athletes put that pressure on themselves, where the external just falls off their back because it's not as big as their own internal expectation. And I think he's a prime example of that pressure versus stress. And his response mechanisms were unbelievable. Part of the biggest plays that he makes, everybody, is he's won in those plays. He's out of position, and maybe he's not in the right spot, but he makes up for that when he responds, when he knows he's not in the right spot when the ball's in the air. So it's pretty amazing of what he's been able to do. He's represented the University of Minnesota in a first-class fashion when he hasn't had to, at any, in any situation. And he's done it everything in a first-class fashion. I know he's proud to be a Gopher, and he plays the game the right way. And boy, is he fun to watch, guys, on Sunday. And it's a joy. So we're proud of him as being an alum. We're proud that he's ours forever, and proud that he's an alum and representing us, University of Minnesota, in first-class fashion, as he always has in the National Football League behind that shield. So appreciate him.
All right, Coach, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Row the boat, Sky. Go Gophers. Thanks, everybody.